going on, you lot? I hope you're all well. Today is a very special day because today we're making terrine. Ever since I was a little teenager in the kitchen, this is the thing that I loved doing the most. This chicken and pork terrine is a great introduction to the world of charcuterie. And even though it does have a few different processes in it, none of them are difficult and all of them can be brought together really easily. So if you've never made a terrine before, this is going to be the perfect place for you to start. And if you like this sort of thing, let me know in the comments down below because I've got a ton of them that I'd love to share with you. And before we begin, if you could just drop a comment or a like on this video, just to try and get it above the noise of the algorithm, I'd really appreciate it. Every little bit helps. And now that the begging's over, the terrine can begin. Here we are at the table and I'm so pleased to have gotten around to this one as I've been wanting to make it for such a long time. Terrines are probably one of my favourite things to make ever since I was just a little young pup in the kitchen. So let's start off with a quick look at what we're going to be using in this one. We have a whole chicken, pork mince, chicken livers, smoked streaky bacon, chipolata sausages, butter, a little bit more butter, an egg, chopped fresh thyme, fresh fat leaf parsley, more thyme, a bay leaf, some shallots, some garlic, and finally some port and brandy. Full quantities and the recipe can be found in the description below. So let's make this terrine. First thing we're going to take care of is our shallots. Now I always prefer to use banana shallots and I often say it's because I think they are a little sweeter in flavour, which I do, but it's mainly because they're bigger, easier to work with and yield so much more than those little round shallots. Just thinking about peeling those tiny little ones already makes me angry, just a little bit. Anyway, once you have your shallots finely diced, place them into a bowl and add your finely crushed garlic. Now, I like using a microplane for this, but you can crush them on your board with the back of your knife or even just chop them up really, really finely. Then place a pan over a medium heat and add a splash of oil and 25 grams of butter. Once that butter's foaming away, add the shallots and the garlic to the pan and cook them in that foaming butter over a medium-high heat until really soft, tender, and ever so slightly golden. Stir them from time to time and adjust the temperature if necessary, just to stop them from burning. You're looking for this sort of sauteing action going on, and I mean, this looks so pleasing. These shallots in foaming butter are sparking so much joy in me right now. Once soft and tender, transfer the shallot mixture, butter and all, because trust me, we're going to use it, to a plate and leave it on one side to cool completely. Keep the pan low, don't wash it up just yet, we're going to use it again. Next, we're preparing those chicken livers. Now, I love them, but I understand that some of you might find this a little bit gross, so apologies in advance. My wife had to leave the room when I was doing this, and all we're doing is just removing any sinew or connective tissue found on the livers. All delicious words, I know, but make sure you do this or they will just end up as nasty chewy bits inside your terrine later on. Well, if you made it this far without vomiting everywhere, well done, because it's about to pay off big time. Place the pan you cooked the shallots in earlier back on the heat and add another 25 grams of butter and get it foaming away. Once that foaming just starts to settle down, you know it's hot enough that you can add your chicken livers to the pan. Season them generously with salt and black pepper and throw in a large sprig of thyme and a bay leaf and then cook the livers over a high heat for about 30 seconds maximum because we want to keep them really nice and pink inside. Then add a generous splash of brandy to the pan, bring to the boil and toss everything together. Now you can flame it if you want, but I had a camera over the pan so it didn't seem like a great idea. Remove the livers and the liquor from the heat and leave them to cool completely. While the shallots and the livers are cooling, let's prepare this chicken. So we're just going to break this little guy down, first removing the legs from the bird. Get something to put all the joints on, otherwise the board is going to get very crowded very quickly. Then remove the wings, the wishbone and the breasts. Make sure you keep the carcass because you can use that for stock for another recipe. I do have a more comprehensive video on how to break down a chicken and I'll link it in the description below. It is a little old now, so if you want an updated version, just let me know in the comments. So to prepare the breast for our terrine, we cut off the wing joints attached to the breast and take off this little chicken fillet or that chicken tender you find underneath. Remove the skin from each breast and just trim off any excess fat from the chicken. Then cut each one into strips lengthways down the chicken breast. The size isn't really that important, so just use the force here and trust your own judgment on this one. Once the breasts have been cut into strips, get them out of the way and chill them until you need them. Now you can deal with the legs. We're going to use these for the farce or the force meat for our terrine, so we're going to start by removing the skin. If you're wondering what the hell do I do with all this excess chicken skin, I have a fantastic recipe that makes the most amazing chicken skin butter, and I'll link to it down below. It is incredible on sourdough or finishing a steak or a little piece of fish. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out, go make it, because I promise you it's going to blow your fucking mind. With the skin removed, take off as much meat from the legs as you can. I'm boning out the thighs here and cutting the meat straight off the drumstick and then cutting everything into large pieces. This doesn't have to be pretty or perfect, just get the meat off the bone one way or another and you're golden. No one will ever know whether you boned it out like a master butcher or hacked it to death, because we're going to be putting it all into a blender anyway. Blitz the leg meat in the food processor until it's really finely chopped and pretty much broken down. If you have a mincer or a meat grinder, you could use this instead, but a food processor does the job perfectly. Right, chicken dealt with, let's move on to our farce or force meat for this terrine. Into a bowl, place the minced pork, the chicken mince, well yes, we did mince it ourselves, thank you for noticing. The chopped fresh thyme, the flat leaf parsley, one large egg which got shy and hid away, but it is there. The cooled shallot and garlic mixture, just make sure you get all that butter in there too, don't waste a drop. A good splash of brandy and a good old splash of port. Then we're going to add the liquor from those cooked and cooled livers. Now this is a flavour bomb right here, it's just so fucking good. So just like the butter, we don't want to waste any of it. So make sure you add it all to the farce, get it in there. Then finish off the whole thing with a generous amount of salt and freshly ground black pepper. Now you can mix this whole thing together. I find the easiest way is to get my hands in there and just keep squishing it until it all comes together. Yes, squishing is the culinary term for this method, sorry to get all technical on you. Once this has been mixed, you can just chill it until you're ready to use it. Now after all that, this is what you should have ready to assemble your terrine. Your farce / force meat, strips of chicken breast, barely cooked chicken livers, 6 little chipolatas, and a whole stack of smoked streaky bacon. If you've got all that, it's time to assemble. So for most terrines, including this one, you can use a terrine mould just like this. But that would just be a bit too boring, wouldn't it? So let's level up and assemble and shape this terrine freehand. Take the streaky bacon rashers and using the back of the knife, stretch them out one by one to help elongate the bacon and make it a little bit thinner. This helps it go that a little bit further and allows us to pack a bit more into our terrine. Lay out some cling film and arrange the bacon slightly overlapping down the length of it. I always try and overlap the bacon with a nice straight fat underneath it so that when everything's rolled up, it looks really nice and neat. It's probably a bit hard to picture right now, but I'll show you what I mean in a bit. Once all the bacon has been arranged, take half of this farce / force meat and spread it down the center of the bacon. Being careful as you spread not to ruin that beautiful overlapping you've done. Place strips of the chicken breast on top of the farce. You might not be able to get all the chicken strips in there, but don't stress. Use what you can without having to pack them all in. And then anything that's left over, I'm sure you'll be able to find a use for them. Dot over the chicken livers and spread them out down the length of the farce so there is at least one liver covering each area of the terrine. Next up is the chipolatas. I normally do 2 little rows down the center of the terrine. Finish everything off with the remaining farce, carefully spreading it around to cover all the meat as much as possible. Now use the cling film to help roll up this terrine into a long cylinder shape to create a sort of roulade of sorts, making sure to tuck the bacon underneath the farce as you roll it up, and this will help keep the bacon neatly round the outside of your terrine. Once all rolled up in the cling film, spread out some sheets of tin foil just to slightly overlap each other on the table, and then transfer the terrine on top, removing the cling film. Then in the same way you rolled up the terrine in the cling film, roll it up in the tin foil, pulling it really nice and tight as you go to keep that nice cylindrical shape. Once the terrine is rolled up in the tin foil, twist the ends to help gently push everything together and tighten up this roulade. Then transfer the whole thing to a baking sheet, fold in the twisted ends if needed, and place into an oven at 190 degrees Celsius for 35 to 45 minutes, or until the internal temperature hits about 64 to 65 degrees Celsius. Remove the terrine from the oven and leave it to rest for about 10 minutes or so. If you have a temperature probe, leave it in the terrine and you'll see that internal temperature continues to rise. Once it hits 72 degrees C, you're good to go. If you don't have one, I'd recommend getting one. They help with the precision and more importantly safety when it comes to cooking any meat. After it's rested, remove the foil and wipe off any gross looking stuff from around the outside of the terrine. I mean, it is tasty, it just doesn't look that good. Then roll up the terrine nice and tightly in cling film one last time. Now this is going to help set the shape of our terrine when it cools, giving us that nice round cross section that we're looking for. Place the wrapped terrine onto a tray and into the fridge for at least 12 hours or overnight to cool down and firm up. Now it's the next day and this terrine is pretty much ready to go. It will be completely cold and basically just be like one giant solid sausage. I'm going to deal with half of this as it's a reasonable size and the other half will keep in the freezer quite happily. Trim off the ends and remove the cling film. There's no good terrine in the ends, just bacon trim which we'll use for tomorrow's breakfast. Hopefully you can appreciate the neat bacon pattern we've achieved by overlapping it the way we did earlier. And more importantly, the cross section of this terrine with this beautifully cooked chicken, sausage meat and lovely pink chicken livers. My only issue with this terrine at this stage is that the bacon looks a little anemic, so we're going to rectify that with a little oil in a hot pan and fry off this terrine just around the outside to get that bacon crispy and golden all the way around. Then remove the terrine from the pan and leave it to cool completely. Once it's cold, finally it's ready to slice. So use a long carving or a serrated knife to cut this terrine into 1.5 to 2 centimeter thick portions and take a look at that cross section. It's like a goddamn work of art right there. This is a great example of what you're looking for in your final terrine. A little piece of everything you've put in there showing through. So think about that when you're assembling it. The terrine will change as you slice down the length of it, so check both sides of each slice before you serve them up and choose the best looking side to have facing up on your plate. Then all that's left to do is dress it up with a little salad, maybe a little chutney on the side of it, maybe treat yourself to a fresh piece of sourdough toast and go to town on this work of art. Because if you just did all that, you more than deserve it. For watching this video. If you like this recipe, let me know by hitting the thumbs up down below, and if you're new here and you like what you see, why not consider subscribing as well. If you like this recipe, go and check out my channel. I've got a ton more just like this one that I know you're gonna love. And if you like the recipes all nice and neat, easy to follow, written down, why don't you head over to my website and you'll find them all there, albrady.co.uk. Hit me up on Instagram or Facebook. I'd love to see what you guys are getting up to. I will see you in the next one.